Hello world, this is Channel 13 coming to you live from Washington's cabinet meeting. I am Eugene Fitzherbert. Today is February 25th, 1793. I am here with George Washington, the President of the United States. Mr. Washington, what is the topic of today's meeting?
We are discussing the structure of our government, our economy, and our foreign policies.
Who are the members of your cabinet and why did you establish it?
The current members of my cabinet are Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, Henry Knox, and Edmund Randolph. I established the cabinet in order to hear firsthand different opinions in order to compromise issues of our country.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Now on to Thomas Jefferson.
Okay, well, thank you for having me.
So, what were you and Mr. Hamilton arguing about?
We were arguing about how I identify as a Republican and he identifies as a Federalist. As a Republican, I believe that the federal government should not have that much power. I believe the states should not depend on the government for help, but should instead have the power to make their own decisions.
Very interesting. Would you like to expand on how you think the government should be structured?
I believe what the Constitution says is the law of the land. I believe that the individual liberties must be protected by laws. We fought for our freedom and we intend to keep it.
You seem to be very passionate on this subject. I wonder what Hamilton's views of this topic would be.
I do not agree with Jefferson at all. After all, I am a Federalist, and I believe that this federal government should have a majority of the power, not the states. I believe the wealthy and well-educated should rule, not poor farmers.
And what are your views on how the government should be structured?
I do not think the Constitution should govern us. I believe there should be boundaries on the freedom of speech and religion, and I believe we should model our government much like the British.
Now I'd like to go back to Mr. Jefferson and see what he believes on the economical side of our country.
I strongly disagree with the idea of a national bank. I would also like to abolish internal taxes and pay off our national debt. The taxes are too similar to those of the British, which is what we were getting away from when we declared our independence.
Hamilton, what do you say?
I strongly disagree with Mr. Jefferson. I believe that a national bank would be a grand idea for this country because it would help control economic policy, absorb the debts of several states, and it would pay the bond debts incurred in continental veterans. I also want to maintain internal taxes to pay off our national debt.
You both have very different opinions. Lastly, I would like to ask Jefferson about his opinion on the foreign policies.
I believe we should support the French in war. After all, they want the same freedom we have achieved, and they supported us when we were fighting for that freedom. It only seems fair to help them just as they helped us.
And Mr. Hamilton?
I believe that we should be allies with Britain because they have the strongest economy. Britain is also our greatest trading partner. Since America is in such great debt, it would be best to do as little damage to our economy as possible.
Now that we have heard these opinions, let's sit down with the cabinet and see what Washington has to say.
Gentlemen, please! This country will never work if all you two do is argue. We need a compromise if this is going to work. It is incredibly important that we combine our ideas despite our differences. We are setting an example for our country and the future of America. How can we set aside our opinions to make a decision for the good of America?
We cannot do anything for the good of America if we are only making decisions for a small group of people. What about the southern states? My journey to New York is not an easy one, and there is so much that I have missed in Virginia with my family. By just setting up this meeting, we are set for failure.
Having our meeting in New York does not have anything to do with making decisions for a small group of people.
Peace, Hamilton. Jefferson, I agree with you. The journey is not easy. As a cabinet, we must look into an area that is convenient for members of all states. Perhaps an area around the Potomac River would be beneficial. But now we must focus on the issues we spoke about earlier. How should we structure our government? What do we do about our economy? What about our foreign policies? We broke away from the British with the help of the French. Where should we stand on that matter? These, gentlemen, are the questions we must be focusing on.
We have already discussed our opinions. A strong federal government is what we need to keep this country working. Otherwise, the states will divide themselves.
If we have a strong federal government, we will go back to a monarchy like the British. Clearly, that did not work.
Gentlemen, I believe you are both right. Looking back on the Articles of Confederation, giving too much power to the states without one central government did not work. However, having a central government that is too powerful will turn into a disaster. We need a central government that takes into consideration the opinions of the states. A two-house legislature will solve this solution. The states' voices will be passed onto the ears of the central government.
Agreed.
I agree as well.
As for the foreign policies, I have come to a conclusion that we are more likely to succeed with Britain as our allies instead of France. We can bring this conclusion to the Senate and see what their views on the subject are.
I think that's a grand idea.
Proceed as you will, President Washington, but my people will have a say in this decision.
Very good, gentlemen. On the matter of the National Bank, I will still side with Mr. Hamilton to maintain the first bank of the United States. This will establish financial order, establish credit for our new nation, and resolve the issue of currency.
Thank you, President Washington.
President Washington, I do not appreciate my voice not being heard, but I guess I respect your decision.
Right in the neck. Thank you, President Washington.